Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you are well. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Let's see. Give me a second. Share the screen. Okay. Get that on there first. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. God's faithful. Good to see you. Muhammad Naimiri. God's faithful. I can see you. I've got you in the backstage right now, but I don't know. Are you able to wait till after I do the presentation? Let me just ask him in the private chat. Don't know if you can see that. We'll see. Okay. And, oh, he said yes. All right. Brilliant. Okay. All right. So I don't really have a topic exactly to go through. Today, I want to talk about a different way of reading the Quran, or at least trying to add something a little bit different, which I will do next stream, not this stream. But let's talk about it first. So I've called it here meta reading. Put that down a bit. There we go. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So one thing I think everybody will notices, and sometimes it's a critique and a criticism by non-Muslims, people unfamiliar with the Quran, right? That it seems very jarring, right? When reading the Quran, reading a surah, often there's huge topic swings, right? There's huge shifts in subject, right? From one topic, it suddenly switches to another, right? So it could be recounting a story of the past, then suddenly switches to signs of nature, then it goes on to, I don't know, some laws or something like this, and then it's onto depicting the scenes of Judgment Day, things like this. Okay, so it looks can look very jarring and choppy to a lot of people. Though for us, I don't know, maybe it's because we're used to the Quran or because we know it pretty well. It doesn't seem as jarring. Okay, it doesn't feel jarring at all. It just feels very, very smooth. And I'm not sure if that's just because of our familiarity with it, or if that's just how it is. I don't remember ever finding it jarring myself. In fact, I've always found it to be deceptively kind of smooth. That you're listening to a surah or you're reading through a surah, and it's moving from one topic to another quite suddenly, and it doesn't sort of like ring any bells in your mind. You don't think, oh, what happened, right? It just seems to flow in that kind of way. So unless you really, for me anyway, at least, unless I really force myself to stop and think about it, hey, a couple of verses ago it was discussing this, and now it's discussing this. Why, right? It doesn't, unless I really force myself, it doesn't seem like a strange transition. This transitions always seem, fine for some reason, but looking at it just objectively, they are very sudden, right? But for me, at least, it seems to, the Quran seems to have this sort of like a lulling quality. So it seems to lull you into moving smoothly from topic to topic, right? Sorry about the background noise. Toddlers getting older and more difficult to get them to sleep. So that's one thing to note, okay? That when you're looking at a surah or the Quran, especially the long surahs, of course, we're talking about the long surahs here. There are different parts, right? There are different parts. Just give me a second. I'm trying to get it to be quiet. I don't even know if I did I mute my camera then or mic then or not. Anyway, okay. So up to now on this channel, when I've been doing these live streams, most of them have been contemplations which are very atomized, right? They're very atomized. What do I mean by that? It means like we would take a topic or a word or a subject matter in the Quran and look through different surahs and get different verses which talk about it, speak about it. Okay, that's a very atomized approach, I would think, right? But I'm trying to I want to start to give sort of readings or ideas which are more holistic, right? Now, yes, of course, people often talk about having a holistic reading of the Quran, but in many ways it still is very atomized, right? So they would say, let's have a holistic understanding of kufr or shirk or whatever, right? But it's still atomized, right? It's still atomized, but it's just gathering the atoms, so to speak, combining them from different surahs, right? So it's more like combining atoms of a specific element or topic from all over the Quran, right? Different verses from different surahs, right? In order to analyze that specific thing, right? Sure, you can call it a holistic understanding, right? Like if you were going to do it about kufr or shirk or marriage or something like this, right? You take try to take a holistic understanding of the whole Quran, but it's still, because Quran is quite a big text, it's not going to be really holistic. It's really you're taking the parts, gathering the parts from different areas of the Quran and bringing it together and then looking at them, right? That's not exactly what I want to try to present. I've put here that last week or last time we did that with the muttaqeen and how taqwa, muttaqeen, and for the people of taqwa, Jannah is promised, right? So I brought most of the verses where the Quran says that the muttaqeen who are going to be in Jannah, that they are the ones who are promised Jannah, right? Things like this. And yeah, you can call it holistic, but then again, there isn't, because it isn't one whole thing, right? It's just the gathering of parts, right? Whereas if you're talking about wholes in the Quran, the first level of wholes, apart from the whole scripture, are the surahs, right? And trying to have a holistic view of just one surah, right? Never mind the whole Quran, is actually quite difficult. It's actually quite difficult. Okay. So what I would like to do is just talk about this, trying to really get a reading which is holistic, right? Doing so, the whole Quran is too big, though. It's too big a task, right? Trying to get, of course, you can get a holistic view of the whole Quran, and I suppose in one way, Surah Al-Fatiha is that, right? Surah Al-Fatiha in many ways by itself is almost like a summary of the whole of the Quran, right? You could say it's the holistic summary of the rest of the Quran. But no, I want to look at specific surahs, right? Some of the long surahs, not the short surahs, not the very long, but sort of medium length surahs, and try to sort of connect the dots, right? Can we connect the dots to see a single thread going through the whole surah, right? Or is there even a single thread, or is it multiple threads which go through the whole surah? And this is kind of reminiscent. The style of the Quran here, it lends itself more to this atomized style, right? In a way, right? The Quran and with its surahs, it seems more atomized in that kind of way. It seems to lend itself to this kind of atomized reading, where you're reading one part and another part. Okay, and it's very difficult to get a true holistic reading of the whole surah, and that's very similar to some of the Jahili Arab style of the poets, right? The style which is referred to often as a string of pearls, where if you ever read a Arab ode, old Arab ode, what they are is just every line is very beautiful in and of itself, right? It's very nice. It's very metered, etc. And each line is like that. Okay, so what you get where you get this impression is what's called like a string of pearls. So each pearl is very nice, right? It's in a string, beaded together, but there isn't really much of a structure or arrangement. There's not much of a thread going through it, right? It's quite a weak thread connecting all of these pearls. The pearls themselves are beautiful, but they're just in sort of like a connected together in this kind of weak way, all right? Which seems very flimsy. Right? The verses are like pearls just slotted onto a string one after the other, right? In terms of the Jahili poetry. Now, there is a little bit of something in that which the guy who cracked open the thing about the ring structure in the Quran, I mean, he took it from the Jahili poetry, right? He noticed that in the Jahili poetry, the last verse or the last couple of verses would mirror in some way the first verses, right? And so that's as much as there is in the Jahiliyyah poetry, really. But in the Quran, he showed that within the Quran, within a surah, you have ring structure within ring structure, within ring structure, within the same surah, and even within one verse, you can get this ring structure within it, right? So it's not haphazard, right? It's not like the Jahili structure, okay, even though it might seem that way, okay, to us. So what I want to say about this is this kind of structure, this kind of like pearls on a string, where you don't see straight away how verses or sections of verses are linked together. They can allow for a very meta message to be embedded into the surah or the text, right? You can have a meta message embedded in that way, which you can't see. It's not apparent in the normal reading, okay? It isn't so easy to see in terms of how one thing follows the other. But it can be, for example, if you have a literal string of pearls, you can make a shape of it, right? You can make an outward shape of it. So I don't know if that's coming across clearly, but what I'm saying is if you zoom out and sort of try to get a meta view of the whole surah, this kind of structure where it seems disjointed when you're paying sort of closer attention to the sequence inside, when you zoom out, you might be able to see a higher message, a deeper message, a meta message within it, within the Quran, right? So how can you get to that? How can you try to see this meta meanings or meta readings? Okay, well, I think first of all, these are just some ideas. You have to remain actively engaged while you read. Okay, so as you read through a surah, you're trying to keep in mind all the time what has been said so far up to that point where you're reading. Okay, don't let the Quran, like I said, it seems, for me anyway, it seems to almost lull you into just going through. Like it sort of sweeps you smoothly from one topic to the other, right? And you can almost forget what was the beginning of a surah, what was it talking about. But trying to just keep all of that, what's been said so far, in your mind all at once, you can try to start to form links between why this has happened, why this is being said, right? So if you've still kept in your mind what was said at the beginning of the surah, the words used, etc., then somewhere in the middle of a surah, you might see a connection between what is said in the middle of a surah and the beginning of the surah, right? If you try to just try to keep it all in your mind, sort of at once, which I know might be difficult, but that's what this ideas I have for this. So I don't have much advice in that way. Just try to engage yourself in that sort of way of trying to just encompass a surah as you go along with it. Keep it all sort of fresh in your mind. But in terms of being actively engaged as well, then the easiest way is to ask a lot of questions as you read, right? So questions like what? You can ask, why is this verse in this particular surah? Right? So when you come across a verse, ask yourself, why is this verse specifically in this surah? Why isn't it in a different surah? Right? Why is it in the surah with these other verses of these themes? Or why is this group of surahs at the start of? Why is this group of verses at the start of the surah and these verses at the end or the middle? Right? You can ask these questions and say, okay, why does this arrangement exist? Right? Because again, a lot of the times, if you think of it in terms of just a sort of if there's no, because we can't see the reasoning behind some of these, for us it wouldn't make much difference, right, if we just swapped around some of these sections of verses within a surah, right? They're still in the same surah, but they come in at different positions, and it wouldn't really affect us as much, really, because we don't see why they are there, but there is a reason they are in that arrangement. Okay. Another question could be: are there any words or ideas that are recurring throughout the surah that come up again and again and again? Right. Another question would be like, what is the surah trying to say by throwing all of these verses together? So you've got different themes or different verses, which will be unique in their own way themselves, right? So I'm not just talking about, okay, there's verses about the signs of nature. Yes, verses of signs of nature are in many surahs in the Quran, but there are specific ones in each surah. Okay, why these ones? Why these in this surah, which speaks about these other themes? What is the link? What is the connection? Okay, so anyway, those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about here. Okay, I've written here, sometimes, or really a lot of the time, when you read a verse and think that verse could really be in almost any other surah, right? With some changes in style perhaps. However, if our eyes were truly open, or if we had that purity to be able to touch the Quran in that way, remember one of the verses says, "La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun." Nobody can really touch the Quran, the reading, the deep reading, except with some amount of purity. Okay, so if we had that, then we would see how well that verse, that particular verse, or that group of verses, or what that verse is saying, fits into that particular surah, right? We would see why it fits so well, and furthermore, why it was such essential. It was essential that verse was needed in that surah, in that place. Okay, perhaps even reaching to that level of why that verse had to be in that particular position in that surah with respect to the rest of the verses. Okay, so I mean, this is a big ask, right? Trying to understand, trying to read the Quran in that kind of way. It is a big ask, huh? But ultimately, we might even come to have that insight with the whole of the Quran, right, itself, right, not just within a surah. So then you start to be able to see why a certain surah is where it is. I mean, right now, the arrangements of the surahs, nobody has ever been able to give a real view of why this surah comes after this one and before that one. Okay, what is the reason for the positioning of the surahs? There's this just general idea that it was just put from the biggest to the smallest, but of course that's not true. It doesn't always follow that way, right? Surah Al-Ra'd is quite short for where it is. So is Surah Ibrahim, right? And there are other surahs which break that pattern. But why? Why is the arrangement of the surahs in that kind of way? Or is it not even part of the revelation? I mean, some people say that it isn't, right? Some people say that the arrangements of the surahs is not actually it's not actually part of the Quran. This was just something that the Sahaba later chose, right? I don't believe that. I think it is part of the Quran, the order of the surahs. So there must be a wisdom as to why one surah follows another. In some of them, it might be clear to see, like for example, between Surah Al-Fil and Surah Quraysh, right? Because the beginning of Surah Quraysh, which says Li ilafi Quraysh, so that Quraysh may be united or come together. That seems to follow on from the previous surah, which is about the incident which happened in Mecca, happened to Quraysh, of the elephant, right? The attack on Mecca, right? And how God repelled that away, Surah Al-Fil. And then that surah ends, and then the next surah says, so that Quraysh may be united, right? So there you can sort of see that, okay? But most of the surahs, you don't really see why, why is Ali Imran after Al-Baqarah? Why doesn't Surah Nisa come after Al-Baqarah, for example? Okay, so the Quran. What about? And this is actually one way in which I think one reason why I think, despite believing that humanity will likely endure for maybe millions of years, if we can get past this time of almost destroying each other on the planet, and that the Quran could still be relevant in the very far future. If it is relevant in the very far future, in the year, I wrote here just some random number, 650,756. If the Quran is still relevant there, it will be relevant, I think, because of a meta reading. It won't be as much relevant because of the sort of like the details of, I don't know, inheritance or this. These things might not be relevant then anymore at all. Okay. Who knows what, if humanity does live for another 500,000 years, things will be very, very different, right? Well, much of the Quran might not apply, but a deeper meta reading, whatever is there, which we don't know right now, but whatever is there, it could still apply. It could still be very relevant, in the distant future. Okay. So I wrote it here, but so many things will not be relevant, but there seems to be a deep meta reading here that is almost like a picture that is being formed. So one which every once in a while you can kind of glimpse. Okay. Whereas most of the time we are like ants, right, crawling across a painting. We can barely just see the lines beneath our feet, right? And crawling across a painting can't see what these lines underneath it, the lines underneath its feet, the colors. It can't see the greater painting that is being made, right? It would have to, somebody would have to pick it up high, and then it can sort of see a whole, much more holistic view. So that's kind of where we are sometimes with the Quran, I think. When it comes to the arrangement of the verses within a surah, and which verses are within a surah, and also the arrangement of the surahs themselves. We can't see any big picture here, but I'm convinced that there must be. Okay, so I was, you probably saw the thumbnail image that I put in. I think an analogy for this can be made by, the calligraphy pictures that people write. People sometimes write calligraphy, and they put it in a way which makes an image, right? So, I put this one in the thumbnail, right? What is this? It's basically the Shahada, right? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And it's written in this picture form of a person sitting, in Salah in the Tashahhud position. And even with the finger out there, right? As we know, you point, right? In the traditional Salah, you point at that time when you say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. You point, right? To indicate, one God, right? But here it's sort of, you can think of this as kind of analogy to what I have in mind, that the writing itself, okay, is there, but it's forming a higher concept. It's forming some higher links in a way where you can start to visualize or understand a deeper meaning or a higher level of meaning within a surah. Okay. Another example, I put in this, right? I mean, I couldn't find many examples, to be honest. I didn't spend time searching, but you get the idea. Here you have this where, I didn't try to read much of this, but I think it's like some of the script from one of the Star Wars films, and someone just put it in there in the shape of Darth Vader, right? So coming out, if you were just going to zoom in and only read sequentially what is written, you wouldn't see the picture, right? But of course, we can, from this vantage point, we can see that it's forming a picture, right? Now imagine if you were trying to see a picture like this, right? If you were like a tiny, like I said, if you were an ant and you were just reading, you are aware of these empty spaces, right? You're aware of these empty spaces. Could you keep in mind and form this mental image yourself, right? Without having to zoom out and see it? That's sort of where we are with the Quran, I think, with these sort of things. That, you have to try to capture a mental image of the surah as it's creating an image for you while you read line after line after line after line, right? It's not going to be spelled out in this kind of way, but you can start to form an idea, maybe. Let's look at an example which is pretty well known, a fairly famous example, though still low level for what I have in mind here. Occurs in the verses of fasting. So in the middle of the verses of fasting, where you have the rules of how to fast, when you should fast, that at night you're allowed to go to your wives, etc. In the middle of all those verses, smack bang in there's this verse which is about dua, right? Which says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. And when my servants ask you, O Muhammad, concerning me, indeed I am near. I respond to the invocation of the supplicant when he calls upon me. So let them respond to me and believe in me, that they may be guided. Okay, so now that's in the middle of the verses of fasting. What is the meta take we can what is the meta reading we can take from that? Well, it's actually what is mentioned in hadith. The meta reading would be that God is more responsive and nearer to the person who is fasting, right? And that's why that is a hadith that we have in the tradition, which we can accept. It has a Qur'anic root, right? We can consider it to be authentic. The hadith is that the closest a human Bani Adam can be to his Lord is when he's fasting. Okay, and that links in with this verse. Okay, you can see that right within this verse, being among the verses of fasting. Okay, when your Lord asks about me, and also there's more things you can take from this, right? So here we have وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي, when my servants ask you about me. So somebody is coming to ask the Prophet about Allah, right? What does that mean? What's the mentality of somebody like that? That's a seeker, right? That's somebody who's seeking, who's trying to become closer to God, right? And he's been told, I am close. I am close. So this is somebody who's an aspirant, right? Somebody who's really wanting nearness to God, right? So you can take that again as saying that fasting is something that can really bring you closer to God, right? And that's something which is known worldwide, right? It increases your spirituality, right? Fasting. فإني قريب أجيب دعوة الداعي إذا دعان إذا دعان فليستجيبوا لي. So let them respond to me. So you can also take it in this kind of way that fasting is also you're responding to the command of Allah, right? To fast. فليستجيبوا لي وليؤمنوا بي لعلهم يرشدون. And let them have faith in me, right? And again, fasting is something which I think does increase your faith, your iman. You can also ask the question, okay, this verse is about dua, but there are other verses about dua in the Quran, right? The Quran has other verses of dua. If you were to take a different verse of dua and put it into this place, it would not match as well as this verse, okay? This verse matches with fasting far beyond the idea that just about that God responds more to a person who is fasting, because of course that's the other hadith which I forgot to mention, which is that the dua of the fasting person is not rejected. Okay, the hadith goes like that. Might not be exactly accurate as it is, but nevertheless it shows that there's a link there, right? That hadith has a root. Okay, the hadith can be itself can be muddled, but still come from a real source. It means you can have a hadith which is like distorted, right? Like the telephone game, right? So you can have a hadith which gets distorted. It doesn't have to be exactly correct. When you say something's authentic, it doesn't have to be that wording is exactly right. Sometimes a lot of the wording gets misplaced. But the point is that idea of linking God's responsiveness and the nearness to the fasting person, that has a Quranic link, okay, by this meta reading. The verse, no verse actually just says that. There's no verse which says that God is more responsive to a person who's fasting, but that is the message we are clearly being given here, right? By having this verse put in the middle of the verses of fasting, okay? And there are others. I mean, in Surah Al-Baqarah, there's the verse about God giving wisdom to whoever He pleases, right? يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَمَنْ يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. He gives wisdom to whoever He wills, and whoever has been given wisdom has been given a lot of khair, a lot of good. That verse is in the middle of verses about giving in charity, right? So the message is clear, I think, there as well, that if you give, because if you give in charity, give of your wealth, give, and giving wealth is a khair. I mean, in Arabic, a lot of times the word khair is just used for wealth, right? Wealth. So if you give a lot of your wealth in charity, right, God may reward you by giving you something which is more khair, which is hikmah. He might give you wisdom, right? So that has not been spelled out in the Quran, but there's a meta reading there which you can clearly see, right, by how the verses are arranged. By giving charity, God will give you wisdom. There are other ones which remain a bit of a mystery to me. For example, among the verses of divorce, there's the verse about preserving salah. Right? حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. Protect or preserve the salah, and especially the middle salah, and stand up for God with devotion. Okay, with devotion. It's interesting that devotion is used there, and this comes in the middle of the verses about divorce, right? About divorce. So is the message being given there that we should try as best we can to preserve our marriages, okay, and not to divorce? Is a message being sent here that not praying or not preserving your salah, right, is akin to almost divorcing the religion or the deen or something like that. But there's a link there. There's a reason why a verse like that about salah is in the middle of the verses of divorce. Okay, but that's on a very low resolution scale from what I'm talking about. Here we're just talking about a group of verses where there's one in the middle which is different. Okay, but this is almost like a key. Right, the fact that this is being done in the Quran regularly, where you have this, and you have a clear meta reading which fits, like this one about fasting or the one about giving in charity and wisdom, it tells us that there could be even more. Okay, there could be even more meta readings all over the Quran, which maybe are more obscure. I mean, these ones are very easy to pick up on, right? Because you're reading through the verses, right, and then there's that shift, and then quickly you shift back. Right, so you're reading the verses about fasting, then suddenly this one verse sticks out like a sore thumb about dua, and then right back to fasting. It almost tells you to question, why is that verse there? It's almost telling you, hey, it's like waving its hand at you. I'm here, right? Try to figure out why this verse, I'm in the middle of these verses. Okay, but in other places in the Quran, you don't have this shift where it's a shift to something else and then back to the first thing, and because that becomes very obvious, right? But what about things where there's just one shift from one thing to another? Okay, so it can get more complicated, I would suppose. Caution, I would say, is that this type of meta reading can't work if your atomized reading isn't on point or correct, right? So I don't think it will work if you're understanding the Quran from the beginning incorrectly. It's not going to work. I mean, I don't want to bring up the issue of salah, but take that as an example, right? The idea of the verse about salah being in the middle of the verses about divorce, right? It will not work. Whatever the meta reading is there, it's going to work. It won't work with whoever has the wrong idea about salah, right? Whether if it's the people who think that the ritual salah is wrong, or the people who think the other thing about duty and obligation is wrong, right? The wrong understanding of salah will not work to give you the correct meta reading. It won't work, right? And maybe that's one way that that can be resolved. That such issues can be resolved by looking for a legitimate meta reading within the Quran, right? It could sort of like help resolve some of these issues like salah for some people. So next stream, what I've decided to do, I've already started on this. I'm going to try to do this with Surah An-Nur. Okay. Why Surah An-Nur? Well, I don't know. I forget why I picked it exactly, but now when I try to justify why I'm picking it, it's because it's incredibly disorienting surah when you think about it. It typifies what I'm talking about. Because in the same surah, you have you have a lot of like very different things going on, right? Right at the beginning of the surah, you have what some would consider a very barbaric punishment, right? You've got public flogging, right, of 100 lashes for the zani, okay, and we're told also not even to to be taken by compassion in fulfilling this aspect of Deen, right? And then in the same surah, we have that incredibly subtle verse of light. Allah nur samawati wal ard, the example of God's light, right? In the same surah, right? So we have this something which is quite brutal, right? Quite a brutal punishment, humiliating punishment. And in the same surah, we have this verse of light, of God's light, okay? And we also have verses about the signs of nature. We also have verses about the dress code. We have verses about, entering people's homes, right? Don't enter people's homes until you have permission. We have verses about eating alone, right? We have verses about dress code, about, lowering your gaze. You have a lot of different verses. You have verses about obedience to the messenger. You have all of these different sets of verses. And if you go back and read the surah and just pay attention to how we're going from this theme to this theme to this theme to this theme, what is the link between all of them? Why are they all there in the same surah? Okay, so that's what I'm going to be trying to sort of do next time. I've already sort of started. I'm using again this same app, Obsidian, and it has this native thing called Canvas where you can start to just make little notes within these little I don't know what to call them, elements or windows or whatever, and then you can just start to form links and see how you can arrange things. So I was putting like different cards, putting a summary of each of different sets of verses, and then just thinking about how they all go together, and why they together, and things that link between some verses later on, earlier verses, but the analysis is still not complete. I'll try to share that with you in the next live stream, inshallah. Okay. All right, that's basically it. That's what I wanted to share today. Let me see. What shall I leave this? No, let's leave all this, shall we? Okay. Let me just check quickly the chat before I bring you on. God's faithful. Assalamu alaikum, perfect dawah. I keep meaning to come onto your channel, but there's just no time. I'm so sorry. Hey, salam. From Mr. Muhammad, there is a book that tries to do a meta reading of the Quran called A Tentative Guide to the Themes of the Surahs of the Quran by Prince Ghazi bin Muhammad. Okay, excellent. What could you tell us what you think of it if you've read it? Hey, assalamu alaikum. Nico, good to see you. I still need to reply to you, I'm sorry. But I did see your message. Wa alaikum assalam. All right, I'm going to bring you on, God's faithful. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, salam. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. All right. So I'll talk as in last time was promised on to speak about the kafirin, and I'll try to relate it al-kafirin with just a lot of character traits in the Quran and how they relate to the amana. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So to start with the kafirin, let's start with the biggest, or let's start with the most clear surah on, or not surah, the verses that like try to describe them in. Okay?
Sorry, go ahead.
So in Surah Al-Baqarah, you obviously know it talks about the muttaqin, and then it talks about alladhina kafaru, and then talks about al-kafirin. All right, so
Yeah.
okay, quickly see it starts from 8 till.
Can you actually share your screen? I don't know how I can get you to actually do that. If you have something that you can actually show.
Yeah, I think I can.
Okay. I think I have to take this off first. And then what? I think you have to basically share your screen and it will appear here.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it. I think this. There we go. Can you see the screen now? I think.
There we go. Yeah, well, it's all this, but yep.
Obviously, same translation.
Yeah. Let me stop sharing my other thing. Okay, there we go. That's good.
All right. So it starts. So Surah Al-Baqarah, you talks about the muttaqeen here, and then it talks about in alladhina kafaru. So let's just talk about kufr, because there's like two positions here: alladhina kafaru wal kafirin, and this is kind of like the action of doing it per se, and al-kafirin is like the extreme version of it. Is like the consequence of what happens. Let's see. Yeah, here. So إن الله محيط بالكافرين. All right. So it first talks about إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم. Okay. So this is just the two verses on it. So I would like to propose that, well, we'll speak on this after, but I would like to propose that kufr is an epistemological position. So epistemology and philosophy is kind of how one would get knowledge, per se. There's like multiple positions. There's this empiricist, rationalist, skeptic, all the philosophical positions on how does humanity gain knowledge. Okay.
Yeah.
And kufr would be, for me, would be the epistemological position of being a skeptic or rejecting truth. This is kind of the essential point of what kufr is. All right.
Okay.
And even by the word itself, kufr is, it's digging something and hiding it under. So digging the truth and then just burying it, for example, even though you see it. Okay. So on this, I'd like to say, if you have had glasses before, you'll kind of see that at least for me, for not being able to see far away things, it's just like the quality of it is like your vision would be like, for example, 244p. Okay. So I'd like to propose this is what when khatam Allah ala qulubihim. Qulub is obviously the mind. What the qalb is the mind. It's there's no aql or in the Quran. If you actually look at it, it's only afala ta'qilun, but the Quran never mentions al-aql, and it mentions qulub, al-qalb, in the position of al-aql, the mind of the person.
Okay. I don't understand what you mean there, because of course it talks about you're talking about as an organ.
Yes, as an organ.
Yeah, of course. Aql is not an organ. I mean, I don't think there's many people who would talk about aql like an organ.
Yeah, because the Sufi position is that we have like four organs. We've got the soul, al-nafs, al-ruh, al-qalb, and al-aql. But this is the aql position is fallacious. There's only three.
I mean, I don't think they consider it to be an organ, not like not like the heart. So when they say aql, they just mean that, like, for example, Ghazali, right, when he goes through all of this, he says all of these are exactly the same thing. So he says the ruh, the aql, the heart, all of them are the same thing. It's just when they are when they are concerned with certain things, they are given that name, right? So when that whatever that spiritual, that latifa rabbaniya, what he calls it, right? That latifa rabbaniya, when it's concerned with things of the intellect and things, it's called aql. When it's concerned with things of like of the emotions and things like this, it's called heart. When it's concerned, so he talks about it in that kind of way.
Okay, okay. So I would like to just completely reject that and say that the qalb is not as in the heart. Well, it is, but it's as in the mind. So you've got the soul, the nafs, you've got the mind and the ruh, right?
So what is the mind in the Quran?
The mind is that which you reason with. So when you make arguments, you say x
No, I
equals
mean,
1.
in terms of an organ.
No, I'm
Or
not saying as in a physical organ. I'm saying as in a transcendental thing that you use. Like the
yeah, I mean,
nafs. The nafs is not an organ.
yeah, I mean that's exactly basically what they say that the Sufis say aql is. It's that transcendental thing, transcendental thing.
Transcendent. So it's not physical.
Yeah, it's not physical.
No. All right. So here خطب الله على قلوبهم سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم. So this is like when you can't see with your eyes without glasses. Now this is, imagine they had glasses, but then they removed their glasses, so they can only see like in much lower quality. There's things that they wouldn't be able to see had they not had if they have the glasses. Do you understand what I mean? Kind of the position of this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the الذين كفروا, with people that kufr, the truth is right there. There are many truths and things but they simply can't see it anymore, or they see a very low quality version of it. It's like having a veil. Right? All right. So, and then here you know these verses. It speaks. I'll move to just the al-mathal. It speaks a lot about things about them, and I'd like to speak on the mathal here. مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت. So this is talking about a kafirin. It's not talking about الذين كفروا. This is the kafirin. This is like the extreme version of kufr. كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في الظلمات لا يبصرون صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون. Okay. أو كصيب من السماء فيه ظلمات ورعد وبرق يجعلون أصابعهم في آذانهم من الصواعق حذر الموت والله محيط بالكافرين. So the kafirin is the extreme version of rejecting the truth. It is the epistemological position of skepticism, if you've heard of it before. There's solipsism, there's absurdism, and I think a person, at least in modern times, that perfectly transcribes or like what he would look like as a kafir would be Kamo. There's here, Kamo. This guy right here. Okay, this guy completely rejects all truth. He doesn't believe anything yet. He like the truth came to him, but then he still refused. If you actually look into his philosophy and all of the things that he did. All right.
Okay.
So kufr, what it is rejection of the truth, and a kafir is someone in a position of a skeptic or a solipsist that completely is fully blind, as it like explains it here. Summun bukmun umyun fahum la yarji'un. So they've been given their mind, their eyesight, and their senses, and they just completely reject it and essentially throw their mind in the trash. Right? And it kind of see this one is much clearer. So They had the truth. Let's go with this and then go here. So they had a fire. كمثل استوقد نارا. So they had the fire. They had the truth. فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم. So then they rejected. Then they rejected the truth, and then after that, now they can't see anything anymore because of their rejection of the truth. They've gone into the full skeptic position of not believing that any truth exists. Yet they still see it. Yet they still see the truth, and how clear it is. So here you have in a dark night, and you have lightning strikes, multiple and tons of lightning strikes happening, and they put their fingers inside their ears, and they're like, no, I can't hear it, and I can't see this. And this is the essence of what it means to be a kafir, a kafirin. All right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay.
This is just the part on kafirin on Surah Al-Baqarah.
In Surah Al-Baqarah, yeah, right in the beginning.
And on the meta reading, I'll tell you something. Surah Al-A'raf is this whole surah. The meta reading of this surah would be entirely on the kafirin. From start to finish, it only talks about the kafirin. This is literally the whole subject of this surah. Right? Just like Surah Al-Nahl, let's say Surah Al-Nahl is entirely, if you read Surah Al-Nahl from start to finish, it only talks about rizq. It talks about rizq, essentially.
Okay.
That's the theme of Surah Al-Nahl. I'll tell you, the Surah Al-Nur, I think this theme is pretty obvious. It's sexual immorality. The whole surah is about fahsha. At least from my reading of it. Like the going, not knocking on the doors. So because any of this could lead to zina. All of this could be sexual immorality. If you all these rules, you see. All right. So here in this surah, I'm not going to read the whole surah because it's quite long. But the whole idea of this surah is that people are given ayat. They're given. I'll give the precise definition of an ayat. At least for me, would be an exposition of the divine governance of God. Okay. So what does that mean? For example, so let's say in God's divine governance, we will be resurrected. Okay. Now, a clear ayah of resurrection is what? Is a seed or an egg, and a seed and an egg, and the rain. When it falls down, you see the seed, it flows up. This is exactly in this exact manner we're going to be revived. And see an egg, it was dead. Like an egg literally is dead, but then boom, it becomes alive. You can see exactly how in real time how death goes into life. Like, think about it a little bit. Yeah. So this is an ayah. This is part of God's governance, and God exposes that governance through these events and objects and entities. All right. And this is the position of the kafir, that when the truth comes to him, he gets all these ayat, these divine governances, and then he just rejects it. He just turns off his mind, turns off his eyes and his ears, and he just rejects it. He just doesn't want it. He just doesn't want it. All right. So here it talks about what the consequences of the kafirin is. It talks about how you've read the surah before. It talks about kind of what they're gonna do in the hellfire and such, and where they are, and they go, and then it talks about multiple nations. It talks about Fir'aun, I think Ad, Thamud, all the Nuh, and it tells them it starts. They've been given an ayah, then they kafir, and then they get destroyed. This is essentially what the surah is all about. All right.
Okay. Yes.
So this is on kafir. So we'll move on to now on the amana. Let's talk about other character traits and how they relate to the trust. So the kafir You know why in the Amana it talks about only mushrikeen and munafiqeen? Because the kafirin is an epistemological position. Why not alladina kafaru or al-kafirin? Al-kafirin or al-kafirat, even though kafirat doesn't occur in the Quran. Is because both mushrikeen and munafiqeen is an ethical position. So there's in philosophy there's three: there's metaphysics, ethics, and epistemology. Al-kafirin is an entirely epistemological position, and inherently is not an ethical position. It's just a question on knowledge and truth. Okay? While mushrikeen and munafiqeen is an ethical position. And this is why it's only these, and only these two. All the other things flow down from them. All the other character traits like al-dhalimun or al-fasiqun, or like all the ethical traits, al-mujrimun, they all flow down from these two, and they're not independent. They're dependent on them. So this is why it has to be mushrikeen and munafiqeen.
Okay, right. That's interesting.
All right.
So, okay, brilliant. Thanks for that. Excellent. All right, I'm gonna have to think about that one about the amana.
No, I will speak about it. I can speak about it if you want, unless someone else wants to speak.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I've got somebody else who wants to come on, but if you can.
I think we can take a quick break, let them in, and then after that we'll talk about mushrik and munafiq and how it relates to the amana. All right.
All right. Okay. Brilliant. All right. Thank you. Let me bring on perfect dawah then. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. How are you, inshallah?
Good. How have you been?
Alhamdulillah. Yes.
Excellent.
As usual, busy.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Don't worry. Yeah, I just was, I wasn't on TikTok before, but now recently I've been checking TikTok, and there are some Quran alone there as well. And yes, quite some of them are talking bizarre. Yeah, there was one of them was saying that this fasting, praying, these are all optional. Yeah, and it was very, for me, I was saying that why, if it is optional, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, it is not as they were saying, it is just something like yoga, because it is good for you in a way that it is good for your health if you fast. Okay. Not if you don't want, don't fast. Yeah, I mean, just like that. So what do you think, brother, yourself? If you don't want, don't fast. Is it something?
Because of course, you're commanded to fast. So
yes, exactly.
You definitely should fast. Yeah.
And they were
something which is prescribed, kutiba.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah, but he was saying that he was bringing up that even what is it in? I think he was bringing up this 545 that it's prescribed for you to, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but if you forgive, it's better. So it is optional also. Yeah. And so he was saying that's also optional. This is also optional, which, of course, for me doesn't make sense. That yeah, if you cannot, yes.
I tried to go onto TikTok as well. Like I made an account. I don't understand how it works. And I was
not me either. Yeah, but I just see when they are live, I know how to join their live. But I don't know myself how to go live and such things. Just when I see they are live, then that one I know. Yes, of course you have to click there. So join their live stream. Yeah, one more thing was that last time I was listening to you, somebody asked you about Hamas, if that's okay, because you were saying that they are fighters. Yeah, they fight for Palestinian, which if it's okay, I can, say what I believe is that.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, what I believe is that it is not about what I like and what I don't like. It's about the principle that, for example, Prophet Muhammad put some laws for war, that you have no, you don't have right to kill animals, to kill innocent people, women, children, monks, and so on. And in modern world also, terrorism has a meaning. The meaning is that if you put innocent lives in danger in a political action, that's called terrorism, whether you like it or not. Okay, so for example, if you go, gangsters, they go and rob a bank or take hostages, they are not called terrorists. They are called, criminals. But if somebody say Allahu Akbar and then, drive his car into the people, innocent people, that's called terrorism. So what Hamas did in October 7, that's pure terrorism. It's not Islamic. It doesn't have anything to do with any modern principles or even Islamic principles, that you go and kill randomly people. And then another thing is that Hamas was created by Israel or helped by Israel to put them against Al-Fatah, because Israel, they didn't want peace. They killed their own Prime Minister Ishaq Rabin, who signed the peace agreement. And when he came back, they killed him because they didn't want peace. And because Al-Fatah wanted peace, so they helped Hamas. And, and not only that, Iranian regime doesn't want peace either. So Hamas has been a puppet of Iranian regime, okay? And they have been, helping them for their own interest, not because they care about Palestinian, okay? Because they don't care about Iranian people at all. And they have killed millions of Iranian people. When they don't care about their own people, how they care about Palestinians? All they do is just to, to keep, these are their weapons: Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and that's why they are trying to get nuclear bomb, so that they can threaten foreign threats and oppress Iranian people and Iranian opposition. So in this way, they are supporting Hamas, and Hamas is, because they get money from Iranian regime, that's why they are under their control. So before that, and keep in mind as well that before the attack, Egypt had warned Israel that Hamas is going to attack, but they ignored it because they wanted that Hamas attack and then they do all these massacres, okay? Because they wanted to take over this Gaza, and they wanted them to attack. So Israel also won on, on this. And Israel's, what is it? It called their intelligence service, I forgot it, is the best. Mossad, yes, it's the best of the best. They knew when exactly Hassan Nasrallah is going to have his meeting, when Hamas leader was killed in Tehran, Ismail Haniyeh. They knew, and the hotel wasn't everywhere. The hotel was in a military compartment. They knew exactly what time he's going to get in the room, which room, and they hit it. So they are so strong, and they have such a great intelligence. You saw with those pages how they had planned all this, that exactly, how to sell them all these pages. So this intelligence service didn't know hundreds of people are going to attack them. They knew very well, like the September 11 attack. They knew, some of them, Israel or USA, they knew that, Al-Qaeda is going to attack, but they let them to attack so that they can go and occupy several countries in the Middle East. Unfortunately, some, these people are under their control, or they do exactly what the enemy wants. And peace is the best for Palestinian. Peace, when is peace in the Middle East? then the pressure will be on Israel to, make peace, give them land. As long as there are war and fight, Israel says that, now is war, shut up, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to take their land. So that's why we have to understand that Hamas, they are under Iranian control, and they have been, serving Israel in this way in reality. I don't know. This EF Dawa, I don't know, you know them. There is somebody there, Abbas. He was saying that Israel has created Hamas and so on. But even if Israel didn't create them, at least, has been supporting them in different ways so that they stand against Al-Fat. Because Al-Fat, if Hamas didn't exist, perhaps today there was a Palestinian land. And perhaps today, so many pieces of West Bank wasn't occupied by Israeli settlements. So these are things that we have to understand. Fight, yes, correct, but not women, children. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, of course, I don't agree with a lot of that assessment. But to be honest, I don't want to get into it. It's a long, drawn out things. These kind of political talks, and I don't really want to get into those now. But I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. But I think it's some of it is just more complicated than that.
Yeah, no, but at least we know that we have to know that killing of women and children is not Islamic. Whoever does that,
of course not.
For no reason at all.
But they didn't. I don't think Hamas went out to kill out women and children. That's not their purpose. Most of the people who died October 7th were killed by the Israelis themselves. They went out to take hostages, so then they could exchange them for the hostages which are in Israeli prisons. If Hamas could have gone in without taking as many people as they could without killing anybody, they would have done so. We saw how the prisoners when they were in hostage exchanges, when they were released, all of them were well fed, looked after, everything great. And just look at the prisoners that Israel was releasing, being through hell, torture and everything. You can see clearly. So this idea that Hamas went out to kill, you're portraying them like these bloodthirsty people that just wanted out to kill women and children. They don't want to kill women and children. They're not going out there to kill women and children. They were going out to get hostages, to try to force something to happen. Right? The world was forgetting about them. Before October 7th, the world was all forgetting about them. Right? Was forgetting about the Palestinian cause. Nothing was happening. The Israel was making all of these alliances with the Arab states, right, with Saudi, with the UAE, all of these normalizations and all this, and nobody cared what was happening in Palestine. The killing was going on October 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd. It was, it's been horrendous. So that's how I see it. I mean, I understand. I mean, you've often talked about Iran, the biggest shaitan, the biggest evil in the Middle East, and all the problems on. Because I understand that you have a lot of that kind of view against Iran. I don't personally.
Not Iran, not of course. I'm myself Iranian. Yeah. It's
against Iranian regime. I said Iran. Iranian. That's what we mean. Iran, the Iranian regime. Yeah.
Iranian regime. Yeah. Iranian regime. Because
I personally don't have that issue with Iran. No, quite the opposite. I think they're the only ones who are sort of fighting, right? They're the only ones who are doing something.
No, brother. The thing is that, brother. The thing is that they are not fighting. They just want to stay in power. Khomeini was fighting against Iraq in 8 years. Okay, and he was saying peace is the death.
In power. Yes. Why shouldn't he stay in power? He's not fighting to stay in. I don't understand what you're saying. He's fighting to stay in power. He doesn't need war to stay.
Can I tell you, brother? Yeah, because Khomeini was.
Like I said, I mean, I don't want to get into these things. I mean, these are not my forte, not my area. I mean, I don't delve deep into these things. But
okay, anyway, but it's all right. Those who would like to talk about it, then they can join my live stream, and I would be more than glad if there are somebody who would like to know more. Yeah, so no problem. Okay.
Yeah.
But
I don't want to get deeply into these things, to be honest. It's not my forte.
All right, no problem. Yes. So thank you very much, brother, for having. Yeah. Have a nice day. Thank you. Salam alaikum.
Yeah, enjoy evening.
Yeah, you too. Salam alaikum.
Let me just answer this. Is there such a thing as excommunication and takfir according to your manhaj? Well, not really. I don't think that there's such a thing as. Well, there is. I mean, in terms of if you're thinking about Islam as an organized religion and saying you the person, what does that mean? Let's say one person says to the other person, you're a kafir now. That only has meaning in a country which is a state, right? Where your status, where each citizen has a status as a Muslim or non-Muslim, right? And there are different rules or laws for Muslims or non-Muslims. Okay, then it matters. Other than that, just one person doing takfir and another one, it's meaningless, right? I've been called kafir. What does that mean? It's nothing, right? It's just the most you can say it is if the person who's making the charge is right or wrong, right? If he's wrong, then he's doing a slander, and if he's right, that he isn't. Yeah, I mean, what does it mean? You excommunicate somebody, call somebody a kafir, excommunicate them. What does that prevent them from claiming Islam? Prevent them from being a Muslim? Prevent them from praying, from going to the mosque, doing everything normally? It doesn't do anything. The only thing it changes is if it's in an actual country where this kind of takfir is done is recognized by the state. So, for example, then it will prevent, according to to some of the fiqh rules of traditional Islam, will prevent inheritance, for example, right? Or it will mean that you're forcibly divorced from your spouse. It's like if you're a man and you're excommunicated by the state from Islam, and you're married to a Muslim woman, then they will automatically say that you're no longer married. It's divorce. So that sort of thing. Otherwise, I don't see this as really it's not much of a meaningful question, if you know what I mean. So there's this. We've highlighted Hamas as a resistance movement. On October 7th, Hamas took a mother with two red-haired boys, one 4-year-old and one 20-year-old. This was a mistake. Yeah, I mean, they could have left them there, and they might have been killed by the Israeli tanks, right? And they took them. Look, I mean, I don't personally, be straight with you, I don't have much sympathy for the Israelis who are living, coming to live in occupied territories and having parties and dance music festivals, a few hundred meters away from a concentration camp. I don't have much sympathy for them, right? Especially the adults. I mean, of course, not the adults. I mean, the children. They don't have a say in where their parents take them, right? But those people who are coming over there and then, we're just innocent civilians. You're part of the occupation. You're part of the problem, right? You should not be living. Israel is there. If I was an Israeli, for example, I would never live within occupied territories. Go and live. There's lots of parts of Israel which are apart from the 1967 borders. Live there. Why do you have to live? Why do you have to be in part of the occupied territories? Why do you have to be a settler? That's almost like it's almost a part of like the military wing. Okay, so I don't have that much sympathy for them. All Muslims are afraid to speak on sensitive subjects. Yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid to speak about these subjects. It's just, this is not the the thing for it. And also, I know with perfect dawah, for example, I know that we will have very different understandings, because I've spoken to him a lot, and he is very anti-Iran, right? I'm not anti-Iran at all. I think Iran is doing better than most of the Muslim world, right? They're actually supporting the resistance in different places. So I don't see that. What do you say when you say you don't believe in institutionalized religion? Well, what I mean by that is in organized religion. So when you talk about an organized religion, you're talking about, like a clergy and these kind of like rules which become part of the state apparatus, right? And so if the state becomes, following the rules of a certain sect of Islam, then it starts to divide people in accordance with, gives them rights or non-rights in accordance with their religion, right? Religious status, I should say. So, where they can be buried, who they can marry, who they can't marry, if they can inherit, if they can't inherit, these sort of things, right? So, in the end, Islam was never meant to be this kind of institutionalized, organized religion, right? When you talk about Islam, it's just supposed to be, guidance, right? Spiritual path, guidance, and that's it. I mean, it's not in the way that it is now, right? It's not like sects as they are now, right? So that's what I mean by that. No, perfect. That is in no way Wahhabi or Saudi at all. All right, let me bring on back God's faithful. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Right.
All right. Okay. So you're going to mention something about the amana?
Yes. Okay. I think a better way would be to describe the abstract characters. Like, let's talk about the mushrikeen, munafiqeen, and mujrimin, al-mujrimin as well. And from there, we can see how that relates to the amana and what the issue with these positions is.
First of all, what do you think the amana is?
All right. For the amana, I believe it's. I mean, you have to think about humanity in general. What do we have compared to animals that is different than yeah. And I believe it is the three things that I'd already mentioned. We have a mind, we have a qalb. Compared to animals, animals can't ration or use reason.
But why animals? I mean, the verse which talks about amana, it doesn't really talk about animals. It talks about samawati wal ard wal jibal, right? So if you're going to ask about what do we have which is different from something else, it should be with respect to those, because they refused the amana and we took it up. Right? Because the verse isn't, we offered the amana to the dawab or something, to the animals and to the this and to that. So really shouldn't you really be comparing it to understand what the amana is, comparing it with those things which the Qur'an mentions, refuse the amana.
That's fair. Okay. Well, okay, maybe the more accurate way would be, what do we as humanity even have? Let's not compare it to anything. What do we even have? We have a body, we have a mind, we have a soul, and we have the ruh. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all the things that we as humanity have. Everything else is like all this technology. This is not ours, to be honest. All right, and it seems to me it's probably the three. The body is not something that's special, that is just given to us. Like other things have bodies, So that can't be it. Okay. For the mind, I mean, you could say that angels might have minds. In a sense, I don't know, but the mind could be one of the things that we do have.
Well, I mean, the traditional idea, right, is that the amana is the free will, right?
The nafs, yes.
The free will. Yeah, the free will.
That's right.
So I thought you were about to talk about it, and you're going in a direction that the amana is the ruh or something. That is the amana, right? Because I think that is one of the traditional understandings as well, that the amana is to have the ruh, right? إن عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها. That Allah offered the amana, which means like to carry the ruh, right? To the heavens, the earth, and the mountains. They refused, but the human being took it upon himself.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
what do you think? What do you think it is then?
It is the three. I think it is definitely has something to do with free will, the nafs, and it has something to do with our mind, that we have an ability with maybe not the mind itself, but we have an ability to kind of come to a transcendental world. We can think outside the physical and material world. Okay,
but if it's about that, then it wouldn't be like you were saying before, that the reason why kafirin is not mentioned and why mentions munafiqeen and mushrikeen is because those are ethical positions, right? So if you're going to talk about the amana being something for which, not upholding the amana will lead to the punishment of the munafiqeen and the mushrikeen, then the amana is not relevant to the punishment of the kafirin.
So you would reject the mind.
Is that what would follow?
Yeah, I think that would follow. Because I haven't.
So the amana can't be anything to do with the mind then.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Then we have the only two logical conclusions. We have the nafs and the ruh. The ruh we don't even know much about, but the ruh, I'll tell you on the ruh, it is pretty interesting. We might actually do know some things about it, but trying to discuss this would take a whole be 5 hours or more. So let's not talk about.
When there was that stream that I did about the amana? I did one stream about the amana pretty recently, where I suggested the amana could be, it's not something like the wording, al-amana. It doesn't have to be an amana of something. It could be an amana min something, right? So when you give somebody an amana, right, from something, it is, I'm giving you safety from something. Right, so when Allah says, "Inna aradna al-amanata ala as-samawati wal-ardi wal-jibal," Allah offered security or safety from something, right? And so I was saying, okay, what could it be that the heavens and the earth don't have an amana from, but the human being does have an amana from? So I suggested it could be an amana min al-adam, from non-existence, right? That because Allah is going to get obliterate the heavens and the earth and the mountains. That's mentioned in the Quran, right? The heavens and the earth are going to be obliterated. The mountains are going to, يسألونك عن الجبال قل ينسفها ربي نسفا, right? So Allah is going to wipe away the mountains. It's going to get rid of the earth. وتبدل الأرض غير الأرض والسماوات. The heavens are going to. So, but the human being has an amana from sort of like being destroyed. He will exist afterwards. And so that opens up, of course, the idea that if he's going to exist eternally, right, he could be punished for wrongdoings, right? So I was suggesting that amana could be thought of in that way. That's an amana min al-adam, right? Amana from something, rather than amana of something.
It could be, but you would have to kind of explain it with how come we are khalifa fil ard, because the position of us holding a trust as a khalifa is
Well, it's not. I
much
don't think
stronger.
amana. I don't think amana is linked to. There's no verse which talk about the amana in terms of being a khalifa, right? They're not as linked. Then there's no verses which bring those two together.
Okay, that's okay. I'll take the other position. I might look into amana min, but I'll take the position that the amana is something that we hold.
Okay.
For now, tentatively. All right.
Yeah.
So it can't be the mind. Then it has to be the nafs, or it has to do something with the ruh. I think it could be both, but it could be most just the nafs, just the free will as the classic interpretation of what the amana is.
Okay.
That's why it has to relate with an ethical position. Okay, and now let's move on to the ethical position per se. What's the problem? Okay, what is, we have to understand what is a mushrik. I mean, it's pretty obvious what it is, but maybe you would like a precise definition of what it is a mushrik is doing would be in order. All right. So a mushrik takes something other than God as God, or takes multiple gods, maybe partnering them with God, or maybe multiple gods that are not even, that don't have any relation with God. Okay, and you have to understand the status of God. What does it mean? What is the issue of taking multiple gods, for example, or taking a god other than God? The answer is, if you take anything, a god other than God, this is where morality comes from. Right? You can't understand what is good and evil. I think we've talked about this in the other stream, that God is good, and from God we get all objective morality. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, if you take someone else or other things as God, then you would have a contradiction and an absurdity. Like, for example, if you take God and the state as both gods, as they both get to decide to what is good and evil, and there's no difference between what is illegal and what is moral, or what is immoral, and legality becomes morality, essentially, which is pretty much what's happening right now. But besides, okay. So if you take multiple gods, then for example, one can tell you to do something and the other forbid. So this would lead you to a contradiction. So for example, maybe a king would tell like Pharaoh, for example, would tell you like worship me, do salah on me, and I'm your god, for example. And if you take God and him as gods, then you would have to reject this. It doesn't work. It can't work.
Okay.
But
I mean, that's close to how I see shirk. Not exactly. I mean, for me, the shirk, the key thing, the defining issue of shirk throughout the Quran is ibadah, right?
That's
So
right.
shirk is to have more than one, to be in ibadah to Allah and other than Allah, right?
That's right.
So it's not even about having multiple gods, right?
That's right.
So somebody, for example, can believe there are multiple gods, can believe in Zeus and this and that and all of these other deities, but they can still have been ibadah to only one God, to Allah, right? Then that person is not a mushrik, right? He's guilty of some other thing, which is falsehoods, false understanding, having other aliha, etc. But in terms of the actual shirk, Shirk is only when there's ibadah to others with Allah. Shirk isn't even when if somebody is in ibadah to other than Allah completely. So let's say somebody is in ibadah to just Zeus, right, and not to Allah, right? Even that is not shirk, right? Because shirk is when it's just about ibadah. So that's why the Quran has, يَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, right? And it talks about du'a ma'allah, wa du'a min dunillah, yad'una min dunillah, yad'una ma'allah. You have all of these. You never see in the Quran ya'buduna ma'allah, because that, instead of that term, what you have in the Quran is shirk. The shirk is the Quran term for ibadah ma'allah, right? So yeah, but it's similar to what you're saying. It's exactly that. The issue with shirk and the reason why it's so dangerous is because you are in ibadah to Allah and other than Allah, and ibadah to Allah will always bring morality because Allah is free and only commands what is good. So He has no self-interest, but ibadah to other than Allah, other created beings, other things, there will always be something in there which will be ultimately self-serving, right? And it will clash, and it could clash with what Allah is commanding.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is essentially what shirk is. It is the ethical position of taking other gods, maybe multiple gods, or one god that is not that is not God. God, small g with against capital G. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And let's talk about. I think this is a good segue into mujrimin. All right. Maybe we don't need to talk about it, but I think it's very appropriate and it makes a lot of sense to have it here. Okay. So mujrimin are, in a sense, a specific kind of mushrikeen. They're like a subset. So not all mujrimin are mushrikeen, but not all mushrikeen are mujrimin. And what is the mujrim position? It's the atheistic, satanic, egoist position. This is pretty much what a mujrim essentially is. And what does that mean? What is this satanic position? This is the exact same position that the shaitan took when he disobeyed God. Is essentially when you take yourself as your own God. You get to decide what is good and evil, and you get to, as they call it, decide what your meaning is, and what have you. This is pretty much a large majority of people right now. Okay, so atheism is Satanism. Atheists do take gods; they take themselves as gods, and this is shirk. They take themselves as good. All right.
Okay. I'm actually going to do one of the upcoming streams is going to be about ijram, because I did mention a few times that it's not what is normally considered. That's going to be one of the ones that I've got coming up. Either, I don't know, I've got a bunch of different ones here which I want to do. I don't know which one I'll do next. Is one I'm going to do about the meaning of the munkar and ma'ruf. One about mujrimeen. One about, I've got here, what's this title here? When Allah shot. I've got another one here. The symbols of Allah versus shirk. So I need to do, there's one which is about ijram. I don't agree with what you're saying ijram is, and mujrim and the mujrimeen.
No, it is. You might take it as an intellectual epistemological position. It's not. It still fits this.
No, I mean I don't take it. I don't take it as evil. I mean, I know you seem to be a lot of the time wanting to fit a lot of these concepts into like these modern frameworks, right? So you talk about epistemology, the skepticism, the this, and these are like sort of like modern concepts about in beliefs and stuff. I don't typically look at them in that kind of way, right? So when I'm looking at these kind of things, like for example, what you said, the kafir is basically the skeptic, right? That's what you're saying, yeah. That the kafir is the person who is the skeptic. So you're basically equating a lot of these Quranic terms to sort of like modern terms in philosophy, right?
That's right.
Yeah, you're equating those with that. I don't typically look at it that way because at the time nobody was thinking about these kind of words, right? Skepticism.
Skepticism has been there for since history. It's been there from
nobody was thinking of it in that kind of way, right? In the time of the Quran, and if it was going to be things like the kafirun or the skeptics, why use the word kafirun? I mean, there's much better words in Arabic that could bring that about, right? Shakun, for example, right? Those who are in doubt, right? Al-mumtarin. The Quran has that word.
The skeptics don't doubt. If you actually look into their modern position, they don't necessarily doubt. They just reject all truth and reject reason. They reject all their senses and all their abilities to understand knowledge. It's not shak. It's a different position. Like I recommend you to read on Camus and absurdism, and you'll see that this is their position. They just reject all truth.
Well, I mean, I doubt they're going to reject all truth, right? I mean, they accept, for example, sensory truths, right?
They don't. They believe that they don't actually. They use it. That's the thing. It's contradictory. They use their sensory. The logical conclusion would be for them to kill themselves, but they don't. They're living in a contradiction and they don't care. They just deny all truth.
Yeah, I mean, I still think these are like very big leaps away from like the what the Quran is, the basic things of what the Quran is saying. So, for example, the kafir, right? In the Quran, and kufr is almost always juxtaposed with shukr, right? Opposite of kufr is shukr. Yabluni ashkur am akfur, right? And so, which is why even a lot of linguists and even in the early Arabic lexicons, everybody sees that kufr, the core of kufr, is actually ingratitude, right? To be ungrateful, right? وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, these sort of things. The verse which says كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ. This verse, it doesn't make sense if you put it in terms of
no, it makes a lot of sense.
Rejectors.
No. It makes perfect sense. Dude, I've seen this verse, and this explains exactly the position of absurdism.
Okay, what is
okay?
How?
Their position is that life and death itself is contradictory, and it's absolutely absurd. If one takes an atheistic position, okay, and that's the idea. The biggest truth or the biggest evidence for God is the rejection of the atheistic position, because one would lead to a contradiction, an absurdity, if he takes it, because of the absurdity of life.
And do you think the Quran talks about atheists?
Hmm?
I said, do you think the Quran talks about atheists?
Yes.
You see, that's where I differ completely. I don't think the Quran ever mentions atheists at all. Like every kafir in the Quran believes in Allah. Right? وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهُ. Right? If you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they will say Allah. مَنْ بِيَدِهِ مَلْكُوتُ سَيَقُولُونَ اللَّهُ. Who brings life from death, and they say, well, Allah.
The atheists. The atheists are not kafirin. Kafirin is an epistemological position. Al-mujrimeen are the atheists. Mujrimeen are the atheists and Satanists. So you can take Fir'aun, for example. Fir'aun did not believe in God. And Qawm Lut also did not believe in God. These are the people that are called
Qawm Lut did believe in God. Qawm Lut did believe in God. That's why, Lut tam fattaqullaha wa ati'un, right? Qawm Lut did believe in God. I mean, the Fir'aun is the only exception in the Quran, I think, of somebody who doesn't seem to believe God exists, right? Is مَا عَلِمْتُ لَكُم مِّنْ إِلَهٍ غَيْرِي, right? I don't know of any ilah other than me, right, for you. But generally, throughout the Quran, you don't see any idea of kuffar or mujrimeen saying that God doesn't exist, right? Atheism is a very modern thing, right? It's a very modern thing, really. The sweep of atheism in the modern world now, because of the success of science and success of the scientific endeavors and after post-enlightenment, all of that, right? Before that, no, atheism is a very, it's aberration, right? Very few, very little. And in 7th century Arabia, in there was no, I don't think there was any atheists, right? Everybody believed in Allah. The kuffar in Mecca believed in Allah, right? So I don't see that at all. I don't see that the Quran even talks about atheists, argues against atheists. It doesn't do that at all. So when it says, that verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم, right? That's an argument being made by things that they accept, right? Why? How is it that you can كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم, right? Like I was saying, what the correct way I think to read that is, how is it that you can be ungrateful to God when you were without life and He gave you life, right? That's why it makes more sense. It doesn't make sense to say, how is it that you disbelieve in God when He is the one who, you are dead and He brought you to life? But the disbelievers don't believe that, right? It becomes a ridiculous argument, right? You can't go to somebody who doesn't believe in God and say to him, how is it you don't believe in God when God is the one who brought you to life? Well, he doesn't accept that. He doesn't accept that. It would be a very bad argument. But that's not the argument that the Quran is making. The Quran is making an argument against people who believe God exists and they believe that God gave them life. So he's saying, how is it that you can be ungrateful to Him, seeing as you were dead and He gave you life, right?
Okay.
That makes much more sense.
If that is the case, then how can you explain kafirin as in summun bukman umya, and the two methods that I gave on them being blind and in darkness? How would that be on gratitude?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that around even now, right? Somebody who is incredibly ungrateful, it blinds you, right? You can't see the favors of Allah around. You stop seeing them, right? And the thing about those verses that you're talking about, someone bukman umyun fahum la yarji'un, I look at that whole section very differently as well. Like from the beginning of it, right? إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. Okay,
yes,
that doesn't apply to everybody, right? This is talking about the Prophet and his adversaries at the time. سواء عليهم أنذرتهم. If you, Muhammad, were to warn them or not, they're not going to believe, right? This was revealed in the beginning of the Medina period, right? And the kuffar here are, of course, Quraysh. From that, I take history from that, which is that the people of Mecca, right? The people of Mecca, they would never become real believers. They became Muslims, aslamu later, but they never became believers. Which is why later on the Prophet called them al-tulaqa, right? They were al-tulaqa. But we're talking about the people who the Prophet was with them for 13 years in Mecca, calling to them, and those who would believe, and that's it. It's like Nuh alayhi salam, right? إِنَّهُ لَنْ يُؤْمِنْ مِنْ قَوْمِكَ إِلَّا مَنْ قَدْ آمَنَ. Nobody will believe from your people except those who have already believed. The rest will never believe. They will never have iman, right? So when the Quran talks to the Prophet here, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنذَرْتُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. It's talking about the kuffar of Quraysh. It's not talking about all kuffar now. Otherwise, that would be a redundancy. There'd be no point in the Prophet going out and preaching to any kuffar, right? If they would not believe, right? What would be the point? You could that. It's not a general indication of the state of الذين كفروا, that they will not believe no matter. No, then what's the point, right? That they will never believe, and you're calling to them, right? It's not about that. It's specifically about the people of Mecca who had had the Prophet among them for 13 years, right? With the Quran coming down, with him speaking to them, with him trying to preach intensely, right? I mean, he was doing his job properly in Mecca. Everybody who was going to have faith, Iman, they had faith by then, right? And after that, after the Hijrah, the Prophet was told, "In الذين كفروا خلاص, that's it. سواء عليهم." Doesn't matter from the rest who are still there. Whether you call to them or don't call them, they will never have faith. They will never have Iman.
Okay, that's
Right.
okay. That's okay. We can move on to continuing on the amana. So I'll just give my take. We don't need to argue it to find the truth.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
We can talk about it. We can maybe in a different day. We can talk about just these topics and see if they make sense or not, and then we would reject them based on that. Right? So I'll just present the case. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So on munafiqeen, so you can see the munafiqeen in the Quran. They are wavering in between. They are neither here nor there. There's multiple verses kind of explaining this, and they don't have a position per se. They don't. They're not like the mushrikeen where they've taken a position that they just don't take anything per se. So it says الذين آمنوا ثم كفروا ثم آمنوا ثم كفروا ثم زادوا كفرا أو مذبذبين بين ذلك.
Yeah.
All right. So now, how does this relate to the amana? This relates in the sense that once you're given an amana, once you're given a trust, you have three positions that you can do. You have the position of accepting it and then managing the trust well. This will be the muttaqin, those who take the amana and take God's commands and they do good, and based on that they've managed their amana well. They've managed their trust well.
Yeah.
Okay. And the mushrikeen would be in the position of accepting the amana, but then just absolutely destroying it, mismanaging it, and it's just an absolute failure. I can speak. I'd like to speak on فلما أخذ الإنسان الأمانة إنه كان ظلوما جهول. It's not that he was ظلوم جهول because he took the amana. It was ظلوم جهول in his management of the amana. He took the amana and he was ظلوما جهول with it. This is how I interpret it. Okay, so it's not that he made a mistake because he took the amana. That seems a little bit absurd.
Okay, yeah.
And the munafiqeen are those who accept the amana. They accept it, but then they don't take it. It's like Bani Israel. And they asked Musa for the Torah, but then as soon as it came to them, they didn't take it. They just, I don't want to take this. Then God took the Mount Tur. He raised it up and told them, you have to take this بقوة واسمعوا. Yeah, they had to take this. Okay, so this is kind of the three positions you can take on the amana. So the mushrikeen, and why the issue between this mushrikeen and munafiqeen, this is the evil or bad position that you took, that you can take the amana with, and everything else flows down from it. So dhulm or fusuq, or you can say that. What else would be? Let's just say these two, right? They flow down from shirk. So when you take someone else as God and take them as what they decide is good and evil, and then he tells you to do this, let's just go against God's commands. and go against hudud Allah, this is dhulm is. This is where dhulm comes from. All right.
Yeah.
Fusuq, for example, would be also from shirk. All right. So this is why it's always is shirk and munafiqeen. It's these two are the ethical positions where they destroy the amana. They completely go against it, and they don't take it. And in this sense, this is when the Quran says, "Inna farratna fi haqq Allah." This is when we took the amana, or we accepted the amana, but we mismanaged, or we didn't even take it. All right.
حسرة على ما فرطنا في جنب الله.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah. So this is kind of how I see it, and how it can't be anything else. Yeah. So if you put in anything else other than munafiqeen and mushrikeen, it doesn't make sense. Like if you take kafirin, at least from my position, it doesn't make sense because it's an epistemological position. It doesn't relate with the aman. It's not ethical. Or you take, for example, al-fasiqeen. For example, why not mufsideen? Why not mufsideen? Mufsideen in of itself is a symptom of shirk, not the cause. The essential cause of the problem is shirk and nifaq, and all the other things flow down from them. So you can't say why not in mufsideen, or why not or what else? What else is there?
Well, I mean, there's al-musrifin.
Musrifin, yeah, it's not that. It doesn't work.
Al-qasitin. You can have a lot of ones, yeah, but
yeah,
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So this is kind of the position on the amana, and why is it mushrikeen and munafiqeen, and that we're mismanaging it, and we're in this sense we're dalum and jahul. That's all. But the amana itself, I think, is free will. I think if it's ethical, it has to be the nafs.
Have you looked at going back to like the topic of the presentation I did? Have you tried to look at it in terms of like a meta view of the surah, the Surah Al-Ahzab? Because I mean, one thing I noted about that, in the question of why just al-mushrikeen al-mushrikat and munafiqin munafiqat are mentioned at the end. One thing I noted about that is the very first verse of the Quran of that surah mentions al-kafirin and al-munafiqin, right? So it says, Ya ayyuhan nabiy ittaqillah wa la tuti' al-kafirin wal-munafiqin, right?
Okay.
And then at the end of the surah, the last verse, it mentions ليعذب المشركين والمشركات والمنافقين والمنافقات, right?
Okay.
So I thought I was thinking, okay, there may be a link or transition in that between what's talking about in terms of kafirin and then mushrikeen. Because the way one of the ways I see shirk is in a sense it's a ibadah to kufr, right? That shirk is, because shirk is all about ibadah, right? And it's about ibadah to the kafir, ultimately to kufr. So it comes to that. So that's why I think that could be that, because that link, the first verse mentions kafirin and munafiqeen, and the last verse is mushrikeen and munafiqeen. So I thought there might be something in there, but I never followed up on it, to be honest. Never followed up trying to look into that.
Okay.
All right. Okay, brilliant, excellent. Thank you so much again for coming on and sharing all of that with us.
All right. Do you think it would be a good idea to end, or I think I have something else. It's less related.
It's better, I think, to end now, because I've got to actually get up for work tomorrow. So I'm going to try to end it and then hit the sack, and of course suhoor. We'll have suhoor later, and of course Ramadan. Try to get a few extra prayers in. Right. But inshallah, it's the next. I don't know if I'll do next weekend. I think might be Eid, right? Next weekend might be Eid. If it's Eid, if it's Eid, on Saturday or Sunday or thereabouts. I probably will not do a stream then. So it'll probably be in 2 weeks' time.
All right.
So you can save it for then and polish it up for then.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, brilliant.
Assalamu alaikum.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. All right. This question quickly from Nasir. Does ibadah mean action, service, like you're doing actions that God orders, but you're also doing actions by the head of the state, which God forbids? Yes, that's pretty much exactly like it is. For example, you don't use your mind, or you're scared, or you're stupid, or maybe, well, it's not with these other things. So, for example, doing something out of fear, right? That is not going to go down in shirk. So shirk is about this veneration, this servitude, right? You have to think of it from what ibadah comes from. Ibadah, an abd, is a slave, is called a slave. I mean, ibadah comes from the word for slave, right? So you think of a good abd, a good slave, a good servant, is somebody who is wanting to obey, rushing to obey, wanting to serve the master, right? It's not about the person who's like scared and you have to beat him to do it and all of that sort of stuff. We're talking about real servitude, right? Out of veneration and out of adoration and these sort of things, right? So when we have somebody who is in ibadah to another person, okay, out of veneration, then that is where shirk can be. If the object of that veneration commands to other than what God wants, right? Because that's where it can be seen. Where do you see it? You see it in the idol commanding other than what God commands. When there's a clash between what Allah commands and what your idol commands. So the simplest examples here is somebody who sees clearly that God says, no compulsion of religion, that let whoever wants to believe, let whoever wants to disbelieve, these sort of verses. And then you have somebody, the imam of your of your sect, of your madhab, saying that the apostate should be killed. And then what do? Out of reverence for Imam Malik or Imam Shafi'i or whoever it is, you obey that, right? You follow that, okay, out of the reverence for them, because you think they know better. You think it's that kind of deep reverence and servitude towards them, okay? That is a kind of ibadah, أطعنا سادتنا وكبرانا فضلونا السبيل. We obeyed our leaders and our masters, and they took us astray, right? It's that sort of thing. It's not shirk when you're coerced, right? Or when you're doing out of fear, or you're just stupid, or these sort of things. No, shirk is about actual ibadah. You have this attitude of servitude, this attitude of subservience, this attitude of following, of obeying, right? Willingly. You want to do that, right? And you're doing it. And then you do it with eyes open, that this person is commanding these things which don't seem right. And you see that Allah has commanded something else. And, from your fitrah, this is wrong, right? But you still do it, right? You still do it. And that's why shirk is so dangerous. That's why it's so dangerous, because the mushrik can be made to do anything, right? Right? He knows. It's not like the person who doesn't know. The mushrik is somebody who knows what God commands, and he knows what these other than Allah commands. Yet still, despite that, he's obeying what other than Allah commands. Right? And where do you go from there? Right? Well, what else? How can you turn a person like that away? Right? Somebody who has that kind of, you can get them to do anything. Right? And which is why some of the worst atrocities are done by religious people. Right? Why are they done by religious? They think they're doing what is right. They think that they're actually doing good deeds. Right? They think they're doing the right thing. Right? They will kill innocent people, blow up mosques, and they will say Allahu Akbar, right? And they think they're actually doing something, but they're not. Okay, they're doing this in obedience to their worldly idols, right? They're doing it in obedience to their worldly idols who tell them that Allah commanded this, or Allah told you to do this, or but they see what Allah commands, right? So that's how to understand shirk, right? Shirk is that kind of ibadah, that kind of servitude to others with Allah, right? The person who is in ibadah to somebody other than Allah completely, like Allah isn't in the picture, that person is more likely to be saved, right? Because this person, once once they come to know Allah, they come to know God, and they come to know what God commands, he can turn away from that idol to God alone. But the person who's a mushrik, he already knows who Allah is, he already knows what Allah commands, yet still he is making God a part, making these others a partner with Allah, right? There's not as much to explain to him, right? He has all of the information, he has all of the knowledge already. All right, okay, so that's basically the answer to that. Okay, I think I'm going to end it here. And Jazakumullah khair, thank you so much for attending. And next week, I don't think we're going to be doing a stream, but back to our usual every 2 weeks, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.